I did a video recently on the Prajadhipok bomber, Thailand's first indigenously designed and built aircraft. This rather obscure aircraft was a little tricky to research as there is not a lot out there on it, certainly in English. But there is a veritable encyclopedia of information available on the Prajadhipok in comparison to the aircraft I am covering today, which was Thailand's second indigenous design, the Prajadhipok, the first TIE fighter. No, different spelling. That's it. I covered the reasoning for Thailand, or rather the Kingdom of Siam as it was then, and their decision to design and build their own aircraft more fully in the video on the Prajadhipok, so check that out for more information. But to give a brief summary, in 1922 the Thais decided to standardise their air force on two primary types, the Brigade 14 two-seat bomber and reconnaissance aircraft, and the NID-29C-1 fighter. Both of these were subsequently put into licensed production by the Kingdom of Siam, using local materials for construction wherever possible. But when the supplier of the French-made engines that both types used suddenly jacked up the prices, the Thais decided to come up with alternatives. Thus, in 1928, the Prajadhipok was created, named in honour of the King of Siam at the time. In the Siam Air Service, it was classified as the Fighter Type 5. The aircraft was of conventional design, an equal-span single-seat biplane that was powered by, I believe, a BMW 6 water-cooled engine. This would have been a rather new product at the time, only going into production in 1926. But it was not French and produced around 600 horsepower, so it would have been a pretty good choice. As said, very little details seem to exist on this aircraft, and I can't even be sure that it was ever armed, despite being classified as a fighter. Indeed, it was definitely an experimental type, more for testing what the indigenous Thai builders could create. Because unlike the Prajadhipok, which did at least see some limited production, the Prajadhipok was only ever the single example. The primary reason for this seems to have been that, despite the greater horsepower available in comparison to the NID-29C-1 fighters, whose Hispano engines only produced 320 horsepower, the Prajadhipok had basically the same performance. This means that, though the figure isn't confirmed, the Prajadhipok would have had a top speed of around 150 miles per hour. So to the Thais, it does seem logical that it wouldn't have been a particularly good idea to go into production with an aircraft that offered basically the same performance as what they had already, which was already starting to be outclassed. Plus, the Kingdom of Siam was about to undergo a rather fraught time politically. In 1932, a coup saw the king lose his absolute power, and a constitutional monarchy established. This didn't proceed entirely smoothly, and there were several years of disruption, ultimately with the king abdicating in 1935 and going into exile. And it's notable that that was the same year that the Siam military decided on a replacement for the NID-29Cs, adopting Curtiss Hawk 3s and acquiring a license to build them. And as they were a much more modern aircraft, that pretty much seems to have been the end of the Prajadhipok fighter, which assumably was scrapped as both obsolete and an unfortunate reminder of its exiled namesake. Now the closest thing to it is a replica that now exists in the Royal Thai Air Force Museum in Bangkok.